Ben Homan, Utah Shakespeare Festival Props Department here again. Second session on texture. Our first session was on some basic textures. This is going to be a little more advanced textures. So texture can be additive or subtractive. In subtractive texture, we're removing part of the item to make it textural. So like this tombstone is a really great example of that. This is just styrofoam, and we attacked it with some wire brushes and things to eat away at the foam a little bit and make it look like an old stone tombstone. We carved into it the letters and then used a lot of paint to help sort of show that those things are carved in and the edges are all roughed up and things. So this is subtractive texture. We're not going to talk a lot about subtractive texture today. It's generally referred to as distressing in our line of work. We'll do a whole separate session another time about distressing, but today we're talking about additive. So in additive, you have a base object or prop, and you're adding things to it to give it more interest visually and tactily, things you can touch. So what do you use for additive texture? Anything, which is the best part. So I just grabbed a box of random stuff we're going to look at today. I have a 40-foot shipping container outside of my shop full of texture stuff. And so whenever we need to add stuff to a prop, we go shopping in our own container. We use everything from, this is fabric gimp that you would use on upholstery to hide staples or things like that. We have some other fancier lace here. We have some paper lace, which are little doily things you can use. These are foam. This one's wood. These are little decorative appliques you can buy at box stores or online. You can use to add onto things. Sometimes if we have one of something that we really love and we need more, we'll make a mold and we'll cast it. So this is actually off of a bench that we did a couple years ago. We're gonna make some more benches. So we took one of these and cast it. This is a resin material, but we can make multiples of this. We have a mold for this now. This is a plastic picture frame from the dollar store. We got string. We got some lace. So in the first section, I talked a lot about white glue. So we often take a fabric like this lace here, and we'll dip it in white glue and then set it on wax paper to dry because it's super floppy like this. So it's kind of hard to manage. And once you've dipped it in white glue and let it dry, it can be really stiff. So this and this are actually lace and fabric trim that have been dipped in white glue. And you can see it's much stiffer. Still some floppiness to it, so we could do another coat if we wanted to, but it's a lot easier to work with and glue onto something when it's not super floppy like this. We use old plastic figurines. I'll show you something we built with a bunch of these. This is actually, I believe, someone's gonna correct me, but these are from a video game. This is a little clown statue. We go to thrift stores and buy this stuff, yard sales. Here's a Christmas ornament from a box store. This is some cardboard trim. So I mean, just anything you can think of, string, we can turn it into something. These are little plastic cake decoration pieces. So yeah, we use lots of different stuff. So to show you some samples, we had to make a big bamboo pole for a show not too long ago. So this is literally a cardboard tube, and we took string and ran 2 pieces of string around with hot glue, glued them on, and then we took masking tape and ripped strips of masking tape and stuck it to the cardboard tube. And we made sure that we kind of bunched it up and wrinkled it a little bit. If you look really closely, you can sort of see where we didn't put the tape down really smoothly, and so it created little wrinkles. And if you look at real bamboo, it sort of has some of that texture to it. So from a couple feet away, if this was a long piece, you would actually probably buy that that's bamboo. Since it's so short, but probably doesn't read quite as well. But this is literally a cardboard tube, some string, and some masking tape to make bamboo. Some other things we do is like this picture frame, which I think is just awesome. So this is a fairly simple picture frame. This is lace that's been glued on. This is some fabric trim that's been glued on. And then these like little loopies here, this is hot glue. We just took a hot glue gun and literally made little loops onto the frame, okay? And then this again is like yarn or string that's been glued into this joint. So we took a really simple picture frame, added some materials we had laying around the shop, and then with paint and texture, which we'll cover in our next section, you get a really fancy picture frame. This picture frame, if you bought a frame that was this fancy, could be $50, $100, $200 for this scale of picture frame. We probably paid $35 for a really generic picture frame, and then spent another $5 or $10 on material and some time to make a really fancy picture frame. This is like, if you can't tell, this is one of my favorite parts of my job. It's sort of making stuff out of garbage. So this was a scroll. It's a scroll holder, basically, from a production from about 8 or 9 years ago. So the inside of this comes out, and there's actually a scroll in here. It has a prophecy on it that they read in the play. But the designer had found this great research of this, it was called a medicine box, from where we were studying the show, somewhere in the Far East. And so we found a brass flower pot. This is a plastic lid, like a Tupperware type of lid. And then these are PVC tubes. They could have been cardboard tubes, but we were going to use it. The show had a lot of runs, so we actually made these plastic. And then we literally went to the thrift store and bought a Ziploc baggie full of little game pieces. So this is a little monkey. This is 2 American Indians. This is a little army guy. This is Princess Peach from a video game. This is a pawn from a chess set. And we just stuck them all on here. We glued on some other little decorative elements with hot glue, painted the whole thing black, came back in with some gold sponging. And again, up close, you start looking at all the detail. You're like, wait, that's Princess Peach. What is this thing? But if you step back 5 or 6 feet and you look at it as an object, it reads as a really fancy, vintage medicine box or something fancy. So it's all about sort of reading the play, figuring out the details, what are you trying to convey by this prop, and then finding the elements that you can put together to make that happen. This lion here is actually, it was a lamp originally. We bought 4 lamps. We made a set of chairs. And so we actually cut the lamp parts off and turned these into the arm. So the arm of the chair came out like this over the lion head. And these were like the arm rests on a set of chairs. The chairs finally broke after a number of years of use. So we've held onto the lion, and he'll get repurposed into something else in the future. Another one of my favorite props, they're all my favorite props actually, but is this. This is a trunk that we built for Merchant of Venice, the gold trunk. It's a really simple plywood. I can't show you the inside. It's a really simple plywood box. But again, layers of felt built up with some glue on it. Some decorative metal pieces we bought from a place in Texas. And then we did a show a number of years ago that had a little army of pewter figurines. And so we cut their legs off and attached some of the broken figurines here. We also had a guy who gave us a box full of these little statue pieces, which you'll see in just a minute. So these are heads of some of the statues that had broken off. This latch that we made is half of one of those little statue things that we turned into a latch for the box. And again, just layers and layers of texture, painted it all. We actually gilded this with faux gold leaf. It's been around for a long time. This was probably built in 99 or 2000, so it's about 20 years old. So some of the leafing has worn off and stuff. But again, the texture of this, when you walk out on stage with this box has presence and feels like a really important thing instead of just being a plywood box. So you're just trying to make sure that you're telling the story with your prop choices. This is another one. This is an orb. If you ever see pictures of royalty, they have a scepter and an orb. This showed their allegiance to the church. This is a styrofoam ball that we've covered in tissue paper, which we covered in section 1 of this. These are some rows of beads. We use a lot of beads here in the prop shop. The cross here is actually 2 lace crosses that we dipped in glue and then put on a little form so that they would hold their dimension. We stuck those on there. And then once we painted it gold, we came back with some other jewels and added them to them. Again, looks really fancy, but it's probably $1.50 or $2 worth of material and just a little bit of time with a hot glue gun and some paint. So all of this stuff is things that you can do wherever you are to enhance your props. One more here, actually 2 more. This is Mad Queen Margaret's walking staff from our last production of Richard III. This is a wooden dowel, and we took several layers of lace, a bunch of white glue, and just wrapped the lace. So we got lots of layers of lace and overlapping, creating some wrinkles. We then took beads and jewels and some little foam foam cutouts, buttons. We rated one of our button jars. Somewhere on here, there's a little plastic monkey. Don't know where it has gone. There's some seashells. There's a little seashell. There's a marble there. So again, it's a bunch of junk that we sort of stuck on here. But again, you step back a couple of feet, and it just has this amazing texture and presence to it on stage that makes it look old, and it's a very character-driven piece. So just a really fun thing. The last thing I want to show you is my assistant always hates when she reads articles in like how-to magazines, and I always go, oh, well, I found this really cool vintage farm sink at this thrift store, and I put it together and made this great, art cabinet and blah, blah, blah. And she always feels like they're like, well, everybody can't go and find that particular thing to make this cool thing. So what I want to tell you is we have all this really cool stuff. We got a 40-foot container full of stuff. It doesn't have to be this stuff. You can go find anything at a yard sale or a thrift store, or it doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be this lion that was a lamp or whatever. Like, you can do anything. So we had a couple years ago, a designer wanted us to build this really fancy wardrobe. He had this great research image of this 16th century wardrobe that had all these carved panels on it with people and everything else. And I was like, Rob, this is amazing. Well, we can't build this. We do not have the time to carve this. So he took an artisan, went out to our frou-frou container, and started just grabbing stuff off the shelves. And he put together all these panels. Sadly, the cabinet itself was too large for us to save, so we saved most of the panels. So this is one of the panels off of this cabinet. This is a paper plate. This is a quart paint can lid. This is a decorative knob thing that we had. All this right here, this is masking tape. We took masking tape and we sort of just squished it up with our hands, and then we hot glued it down. Another panel, this is one of those cool statue things I was talking about. They were on the front of a dresser, and this guy gave us this dresser, and we pulled all of the statues off of it and held onto them. So that we happened to find, but you could find something different to put there. And again, masking tape. And then to paint them, we took the same thing we were using on the actual wood of the cabinet and found a paint that matched, and we just sponged the paint on, so it had a wood grain sort of feel to it. And when you put this next to the stained wood, you would never tell the difference. And they actually looked really, really amazing. So you can do this. You can find the stuff, be creative, make sure it's appropriate for the show you're doing, and just kind of go to town on it. To show you that, really quickly, we have these old tins. We did a show a couple years ago set in World War II, and so we had to make a bunch of ration tins. So we found these tins at, I think it was at Joann's at the time. They were like $2 a piece. We bought them, we spray painted them, and then we did a silk screen for the label on them. So I have a bunch of these left over, so I thought I would use one of these today. So we're gonna take this, and out of our pile of stuff here, I'm gonna pull out these beads, these little cake decorations, which are plastic. What else do we got here? These are some plastic leaves that we molded. We had one, and we molded some more of them out of a resin. And is there a ring of some sort here? Yeah, this ring here, which is actually like an old pole for a curtain, and it has this ring on the top. So you can modify this stuff as you see fit. So I'm gonna just sort of chop this ring off the top here. And then you can start gluing this stuff, if I can get my hot glue gun up here on the table safely, to your tin. And again, for the sake of time, I have pre-made one of these. So this is the finished outcome. So we have beads around the edge. My glue came off a little bit there. The cake decorations here, the metal ring, we found a button for the middle, and then 2 of the leaves, okay? And then I'm going to spray paint it red, and again, for time. There it is, all in red. So you can see, if you look real closely, you might be able to see it still says field here, because when we silk screened it, we made the ink really thick. So if I was to do this for real, I might sand down the box a little bit before I glued the other stuff on, but it gives you an idea of kind of what we can do. And of course, Turtle has to show up in one of my videos. So there you go. So this is basically the end of session 2. In the next session, we're gonna take this box and also the panels we made in session 1, and I'm gonna show you how to sort of pop all that texture using paint. So there you go, and we'll see you in the next section.